All right, good morning, Rabbi Say. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning. Sure to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Sivan, the families who have dedicated all the children drushos this month, Steve and Teri Czinn, with gratitude to Hashem as they welcome their fifth grandchild, Gavriel Amichai Czinn, and the loving memory of Steve's mother, Doris Czinn, Devorah, Basra, Yisroel Yoel, Shaindy and Avraham Kelman from Yisrael for dedicating all of Shemar Joshua this month, creation of the yahrzeit of Avram's father, Rephael Yechiel ben Avraham. Our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Matt and Diane Marks, in memory of the yahrzeit of Diane's beloved mother, Patricia Zivi, Yisroel and on behalf of the shir, we wish Rab Matt a very happy birthday. Mazel tov, mazel tov. And our Daf Yomi today is sponsored by Boruch Meir Dubin in honor of Yoni Frager's birthday and in honor of his upcoming aufruf b'sha'at tova u'mitzlachos chasunah wedding this Sunday b'sha'at tova u'mitzlachos. Tremendous yashakayach. Mazel tov Yoni. And Kadosh Baruch Hu should just bench you with arichos yamim v'shanim and incredible mazel, bracha, and simcha. And Matt and Rishona Lebovitz on honor of the birth of their daughter, Baruch Hashem, who was born yesterday. Mazel tov to Lebovitz mishpacha. I hope you saw the picture that I sent out on the chat yesterday. Mamish inspiring. First of all, imagine if we all entered into this world with the sounds of Torah reverberating in our little ears. How different life would be, and Baruch Hashem, such a beautiful display of dedication to Torah, dedication to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Meretz Hashem, this little girl should grow up to become a happy, healthy, well-adjusted Bas Yisrael, and Meretz Hashem, someone who gives nachas to her parents, to Ribono Shel Olam, Ad 120 Shanim Tovos. Goes with that? Oh, and the shir dedicates a mazel tov to Eliyahu Rosborough. We had a beautiful dance last night at Chassidus Chabura, celebrating Eliyahu's engagement to Pamela Bornstein. Mazel Tov, Mazel Eliyahu. Continued simchas, brachas. You should be zochet to send the l'chuv b'sha'at tova u'mitzlachas. Mazel Tov. We had like a little chasunah last night at Chassidus. I felt like it was a little chasunah already. We were missing the kala, but besides that, we had everything. All right, so I'll say with that, let us, a lot of simchas, so you continue simchas for all the Klal Yisrael. Today's daf is daf Gimel. Also, we have a ridiculous, I just want to tell you something, next couple of days, off the rails. In a good way, not like a train derailment, right? In a good way. But let's say some incredible stuff happening in the next couple of days. Today's daf is Gimel, Basra. We are picking up on Beis about 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, about 10 lines up from the bottom. Tashma. So remember again, just to reorient ourselves a little bit. We are in the midst of a very important machlokes regarding, first of all, the definition of mechitza. Does mechitza mean a division, or does mechitza mean a wall? The follow-up to that is hezek re'iyah. Is visual damage considered to be damage or not? So the Gemara says as follows. So Tashma, hachalonos, windows, bein milamala, bein milamata, bein mikinegdan, dal ramas. So we'll say when you are building a wall opposite windows, whether again the windows are above, below, or opposite, there needs to be a distance of dalit amas. So we'll say, so what does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. Hachalonos, echad mibnei hashutfin, habona kosel b'chatzer kineged chalonos shel chavero. So we'll say, here's the case. Reuven and Shimon share a chatzar. They're building a wall, right? So Reuven is going ahead and they're building a wall, and Reuven's wall, the wall corresponds obviously to Reuven's home to Shimon's home. Shimon has windows that are opposite the wall. So what's the halacha? If the wall itself is higher than the windows, right, we have to make sure that the wall is at least daled amas higher than the windows. Similarly, it goes, Rashi says, if the window is lower than the walls, the window must be more than dalet amas lower than the walls. I will say the idea behind that is we don't want the neighbor being able to stand on top of the wall and be able to see into the windows of his neighbor. So therefore, if the wall is taller than the windows, it's got to be dalet amas taller. If it's lower than the windows, it's got to be dalet amas shorter. If it's opposite the windows, you need dalet amas of distance. Now the reason for that is because that has nothing to do with seeing in, that has to do with casting a shadow. You don't want the wall to block out the daylight, ultimately, of the windows. So the Gemara says as follows. So Tani Allah, we learned about this. Milamalon kadesh lo yatzitz. Here it is. Why? So if the wall is tall, then the windows, you have to make sure that the wall is at least dalit amas taller. Why? Shelo yatzitz v'yira milabatan, so that the neighbor shouldn't be able to sit on top of the wall and see into the house of his fellow milamaton. If the wall is below the windows, you have to make sure that it's at least dalit amas below the windows. Kadesh lo yamod v'yira, or that you shouldn't be able to stand on the wall and see into the windows. Mikenegnon. There has to be a distance between the wall and the neighbor's house of Dalet Amos. Why? Kedei shelo yafil. In order that the wall should not block out the daylight, the sunlight, from the home. So I'll say, so what do you see from here? You see from here that when it comes to structuring a wall, you have to be careful about the height of the wall so that one neighbor shouldn't be able to look into the house of the other neighbor. What does that show you? That hezek re'iyah, have hezek, that visual damage is considered to be damaged. Tushim Gemara says, no, that's not a good case, not a good proof. Why? Hezek debayis shani. I will say, remember again, up until this point, we were speaking about hezek re'iyah, and there's a machlokes, is hezek re'iyah hezek or not? What are we talking about? The ability to see into someone's chatzar, right? The ability to see into someone's courtyard. That's what there's machlokes. Everyone agrees that the ability to see into someone's house, of course, is a damaging force. Because they'll say, why? Because obviously a person is going to perform all types of private things inside the confines of their house. And what makes a house, or one of the things that makes a house, is the concept of privacy. So obviously the ability to see into someone's house, everyone will agree that's hezek re'iyah. The shayla is the ability to go ahead and see into someone's chatzar. Right? Is that called hezek or not? That's the machlokas. Okay, so we're narrowing down the scope a little bit. This is reminiscent that when Bilam tried to go ahead and curse Klal Yisrael. So remember again, obviously the story. It doesn't work, and every time he tries to curse Klal Yisrael, he goes ahead and he blesses Klal Yisrael. So interestingly enough, one of the beautiful brachas he gave us is a bracha we say every single day: Matovu ohalecha Yaakov. How beautiful are the tents of Yaakov. So Rashi says, what was Bilam referring to? Ra'u shemechavnim pischein zu keneged zu. He saw that when the Jews camped in the desert, they were careful that their tents, that the doors not be opposite each other. Right? Why? What's the issue? Because again, if the doors are opposite each other, if Reuven's coming out of his tent, Shimon's coming out of his tent, the doors are open at the same time, Reuven can see it to Shimon's house, Shimon can see it to Reuven's house, and that's a lack of tznius, a certain lack of modesty, a lack of privacy. So you see again that the ability to see into someone's house, everyone agrees is something detrimental. The machlokes is, does the concept ultimately of hezek re'iyah apply to a chatzar or not? Okay, let's go right there. Tashma, Dam Rav Nachman, Amr Shmuel, Gag hasamach l'chatzar chabero. Supposed to listen to this. If you have a roof that is close to the chatzar of someone else, so let's say, for example, Reuven and Shimon are neighbors, right? And Reuven's roof overlooks Shimon's chatzar. So what's talachon? Osin lomakya gavah dalet amas. So Reuven has to make a fence of dalet amas on his rooftop, right? So I'll say, why? Now, by the way, dalet amas is 6 feet. 6 feet, a privacy fence. So why does Reuven have to go ahead and make a makkah? Why does he have to make a fence of dalet amas around his roof so that he shouldn't be able to see into Shimon's chaser? What do you see from here? Hezek re'iyah is hezek, to which the Gemara says, no, shiny hasam. That's a different kind of case. Why? The Amr le bala chatzar le bala gag, because Shimon, the owner of the chatzar, can say to Reuven, the owner of the roof, Lididi kvili tashmishi. See, for me, it's my chatzar. My chatzar I use all of the time. Lididach lo kvila la tashmisha seich. But for you, for the use of a rooftop, the use of a rooftop could be irregular. And I Shimon, don't know when you, Reuven, are using your roof. Therefore, v'lo yedana bei, behei idna salikna va'asis, top of Gimel, ditztana minach. Because at the end of the day, this is different. Because it could very well be that when two people share a chatzar, right, and at the end of the day, they understand that because someone else is technically sharing that space, not that exact space, but sharing the corresponding space, I know I can't do things that require more privacy in my chatzar because someone else is there, and someone else could pop out at any time. That's different than the case, ultimately, again, of a roof and of a chatzar. Since again the chatzar is a regular use, The roof could be an episodic use. Therefore, Shimon, the owner of the chatzar, says to Reuven, the owner of the roof, I have no idea when you're out, when you're not out. So because of that, we make Reuven put up a wall so that he can't see into the chatzar of Shimon. Very interesting. Okay, but I will say, but lav dafka, it goes ahead and improves anything, because it could very well be that in a case of where both people live in a chatzar, they understand that both are going to be there consistently, and therefore, again, by definition, no one's going to go ahead and perform really anything all that private in the chatzar itself. All right, lishnachrina. So I'll say, so another possibility. So we'll say, so remember again, we still haven't resolved this issue yet. Lishnachrina, another version of this. Amri Allah, savru amay mechitza. So we'll say, let's go back for a second. What's mechitza? Remember again, we'll say, we're going back to the Mishnah. Hashutfin sheratzu lasos mechitza b'chatzar. You have partners who want to make a mechitza in the chatzar. So what's the lashon of the Mishnah? Bonen es hakosel ba'emtza. They build the wall in the middle. So we'll say, so now once again, the machlokes is, what is the definition of the word mechitza? So the Gemara says, lishnachrina, amri le'savru, my mechitza. What's a mechitza? Plugta. So mechitza really means division. Division. That's what it means. It means a division. So therefore, we'll say, the way to read the Mishnah is as follows. Reuven and Shimon live in a chatzar side by side. They're partners in a chatzar. And now, shiratzu lasos mechitza. They decided they want to divide their field. What does the Mishnah say? Once partners say they want to divide their field, they must put up a wall. They have to put up a wall. That's what the division triggers. So the chsiv, how do you know that mechitza means a division? Well, it says yesterday's daf. The chsiv, vati mechza sa'ida. Fine. The chayvan deratzu, since they both wanted to go ahead and divide the chatzar, bonin as akosel bal karchan. So we'll say, see, here's how to read the Mishnah according to this approach. Reuven and Shimon are partners in the chatzar. They decide we want to divide up the chatzar. Once there is agreement that we're going to divide a chatzar, you must build a wall. So you'll say, saying you want to divide up the chatzar, essentially, the way the halacha understands it is they both say we want privacy. Okay, well, once one of the parties in the chatzar wants privacy, that triggers a division, and division requires a wall. What does that show you? Alma hezek ri'iyah shmei hezek. See, I will say the fact that when someone wants a division, it requires a wall, as opposed to what? I don't know, like a little picket fence or something else. The fact that it requires a wall indicates to us that one party doesn't want the other party looking into their chatzar, because again, that's called visual damage. That's called hezek re'iyah. So you see from here that hezek re'iyah, shmei hezek. Visual damage is considered to be a bona fide form of damage. Incredible. So the Gemara says, one second, not so fast. Ema, my mechitza, guda. How do you know? Maybe what mechitza means is like this. Maybe mechitza means a wall. Well, once again, we keep going back and forth. Maybe mechitza doesn't mean a vision, but mechitza means a wall. This nan, mechitza sakem shenifratza omer lagudar. So we'll say this is just literally again chazar from yesterday's daf. Remember again, Reuven and Shimon are neighbors. Reuven has vines, Shimon has wheat. So they have a wall in between the vineyard and the wheat field, and that allows each party to plant up to the area of the wall. Now what happens? The wall breaches. So we say to the owner of the vineyard, right? We say to Reuven, fix the wall. So what happens? So now Reuven fixes it. Nifritza, it breaches again. Omer lo gidar. So we said, Reuven, fix the wall. What happens if Reuven, at the end of the day, essentially we said yesterday, means Reuven just doesn't repair it. It doesn't mean that he makes anything yeyosh. It means that he abdicates his responsibility to go ahead and fix the wall. The halacha is any future growth becomes kilayim, therefore again prohibited. And furthermore, Reuven, because of his failure to go ahead and fix the breach of the wall, is chayiv for any kind of damages. The Gemara says, "V'tayme duratzu." At the end of the day, the Gemara says, I said, this is just the Gemara. Remember, why do we bring down this whole thing? Because in this context, the word mechitza is used for what? For wall. Okay, so we'll say, so we keep coming back to that same machlokes as to how you define mechitza. Does mechitza mean a division? And therefore, again, does mechitza mean division? And therefore, halacha l'maisa, again, you glean from the Mishnah that hezek re'iyah shmei hezek, or maybe mechitza just means wall. And if it means wall, you wouldn't necessarily glean that hezek re'iyah shmei hezek. The Gemara says, so therefore we'll say, going with this idea, if you go with the idea that mechitza means a wall, so therefore we'll say, how does the Mishnah read? Hashutfin shiratzu lasos mechitza. If shutfin want to make a wall in the chatzar, so go ahead, bonin esakosel b'emtza. Where do they build the wall? They build the wall in the middle. V'tayme duratzu. Now we'll say, according to the Mishnah, the only reason shutfin ever have to build a wall is why? Only in a case where they both consent. So I just want to point out this nuanced difference in the reading of the Mishnah. If you understand that mechitza means division, then what it means is like this. Hashutfin sheratzu lasos mechitza. When shutfin decide that they want a division in their chatzar, what does a division mean? We force them to build a wall. We force them to build a wall. Why? Hezek re'iyah shmei hezek. On the other hand, if you read the Mishnah of Hashutfin sheratzu lasos mechitza b'chatzar means that they decide they want to build a wall. Now, why are they building a wall? Why are they building a wall? Because they each decided. It's a voluntary initiative. That the Mishnah says, by the way, when you build the wall in the middle. So we'll say, so what that tells you is, the only time you have to build the wall is when they both consent. Time of the ratzu. The reason you're putting up this wall is because they both want it. Hala ratzu. Also. And if they didn't want a wall, you wouldn't obligate them to build it. Alma hazek riya lav shmei hazek. They will say, what do you see from here? That visual damage is not damage. Because we'll say, the only reason they have to build the wall is because they both want it. If they don't want it, you don't have to build it. If that's the case, then why does the Mishnah? If mechitza means wall, then why do you have to say bonin esakosel? They build the wall. Just say bonin oso. We build it. So the Gemara says, Ella my plugta. So I'll say, therefore the Gemara says, you're right. So it has to be that mechitza doesn't mean wall, because grammatically then the Mishnah doesn't make sense. Rather, it has to be that what is mechitza? Mechitza is a plugta. It's a division. It's a division. So 1 second, the Gemara says, if that's the case, then the Mishnah shouldn't say Ashutfin Sharatzu Lasos Mechitza, but rather it should say Ashutfin Sharatzu Lachtzos. If partners want to go ahead and divide something, because we'll say again, this is just the way that people talk. Okay, so the Mishnah is kind of using like a vernacular. Like people say, come, let us make a division. But here's the problem, I'll say. Okay, so now it sounds like what the Gemara is settling on is that the lashon of mechitza actually means a division. Right? And therefore the Mishnah really says like this. Hashutfin sheratzu lasos mechitza. Reuven and Shimon are neighbors. They decide that they want to make a division. Let's say, you don't have to make a division. In other words, if you live in a chutzner with your friends and family, and you're happy with this open space living, go right ahead. But the moment that, we'll see if it's one party or all the parties, the moment that someone says, you know what, I need a little bit of privacy over here, right? I need to divide up my space, then einachinami, you divide up the space. So, and therefore that's what it means. If they want to make a mechitza, they want to make a division. Once someone wants a division, how do you make a division? You have to put up a wall. A wall, right? Why? Because hezek ri'iyah, shmei hezek. Visual damage is considered to be damage. So now watch this. So the Gemara says, v'iyah hezek ri'iyah shmei hezek. So now I will say, based on what we're saying, is visual damage is damage. If that's true, my ir yaratzu, afilu lo ratzunami. So we'll say, who cares if they want it? In other words, whether this whole thing over here is being triggered because the parties want it. But if hezek ri'iyah is hezek, then I don't understand. Even if the parties don't want it, there should be an obligation to put up a wall. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan, Mishnah Sinu Kishein Badin Chaluk. I will say, Rashi alluded to this already in yesterday's daf. This is very interesting. What's our Mishnah talking about? So I will say, in general, we're going to get into this. About one of the interesting things we're going to talk about is the ability of partners to either dissolve or reframe partnerships. So, for example, if you're talking about a chatzar that is 8 by 4 amas, right? Therefore, again, which means that there's 4 amas for each party, right? For each party, then either party could go ahead and automatically trigger a division. Why? Because we each end off with a parcel of daled amas. Fine. What happens if the area, the chatzar in question, is less than 8 by 4? Which means that when there is a 50%, right, a half division for each of them, 50% for each of them, everyone walks away with less than daled amas. In a smaller parcel like that, neither party could trigger a division. So I will say, the only time you could do a division in a case like that is when both parties want the division. So the Mishnah says, like the Gemara says, like this is very interesting. The Mishnah says, Rabbi Yasser and Rabbi Yochanan, what's the case of our Mishnah? The case of our Mishnah is in a small parcel, where there is not enough for daled amas for each party. Therefore, neither party on their own could trigger a division. But if they both agree to a division, then of course you can. Therefore, again, the Gemara says, "Kishein badin chaluka v'hadiratzu my kamashmalan." So we'll say, so that's the case. Okay, so let's analyze this. We're talking about a parcel of land that's less than 8 by 4 amas, and therefore, again, neither party could trigger division on their own. We're going to see this all inside a bit more. And therefore, the Mishnah is saying that if they both agree to divide it, you divide it. All right. So what's the chiddush? So Gemara says v'hai diratzu my kamash malon. So I would say dichi less beidin chaluka kiratzu pligi. So is the Mishnah coming to teach me that when you have a parcel of land that's less than 8 by 4 amas, that if they both agree you could divide it up? Is that the kunz of the Mishnah? We've learned that already, or we will learn that. Tanina emasai bizman shein shnei and rotzim. So I'll say when you have a parcel of land that is less than 8 by 4 amas, when is there no division? When both of them don't agree to it, aval bizman shnei rotzim. Afilu pachos mikan cholkin. I will say, but halacha l'maisa, if you have a tiny piece of land that's owned by 2 people and they both agree to a division, then what? Then divide it. So we've already learned that concept. I don't need this Mishnah to teach me that concept. Gemara says, no. Ime hasam, because they will say, had it been from there, from that second Raisa, hava amina afilu pachos mikan b'misifim ba'alma. I would have thought like this. What does division mean? I will say, what does division mean? Division means just like with markers. Because remember again, think about this just a moment, especially if you have a small tract of land. We've already seen the wall has a thickness to it. Right? The wall's a thickness. So I might have thought that in such a small piece of land, even though when both parties want it, you divide up land. But how do you divide it? Just with a property marker. You're not putting up a wall. Kamash malon hacha kosel. Therefore, again, our Mishnah teaches us that no, anytime partners agree to a division of property, how do you divide up partnership property? I will say a wall. Now, again, coming full circle, what does that tell you? If it has to be with a wall, what does that tell you? What is that? Hezek riyah shmei hezek. That visual damage is in fact a form of damage. Okay, let's go weiter. I have a listening ha for low listening ha. So why not just mention our Mishnah and omit the second source? To which the Gemara says, Seifa strichale. No, because you need the end of that brayso. What's the end of that brayso? Or the end of that Mishnah, I should say. The Gemara says, the kisvei kodesh afal pisha shneim rotzen lo yachloku. So we'll say, it makes it sound like, it's important to understand that it makes it sound like on one hand, from our Mishnah, that maybe anything that partners own together, if they agree on a division, you can go in and divide it up. So let's say Reuven and Shimon own a Torah scroll or a Tanakh scroll together. And they say, you know what, we're tired of sharing, so let's just divide it up. Right? You'll get this, I'll get that. We do not divide up a scroll of Kisvei Kodesh. Rashi points out why. Because that's a lack of covet to the scroll itself. So although, in general, when it comes to partnership property, no matter how big or small, if both of them agree to a division, you will divide it up. There are certain exceptions to that rule. For example, Kisvei Kodesh. Incredible. So let's go back there. Adashmo inon, I'm skipping those next 2 lines there, the Lishna Achrina. Adashmo inon, b'she'in badin chaluka, v'hadiratzu. So now the way you're setting this up is like this. The Mishnah is talking about a case, our Mishnah, Basra. The Mishnah is talking about a case of a chaser that is less than 8 by 4 amas. Therefore, again, neither party could halachically trigger the division. And the only way division works is if both parties agree. So now you're coming to teach me that if both parties agree to division, they put up a wall. Okay. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. But instead, I will say, why don't you teach me a better case? Teach me a case of a chazer that is 8 by 4 amas, so it's large enough to be divided, and teach me that even in a case where what? The parties didn't want a division, the halacha says you got to divide it and put up a wall. To which the Gemara says, because had the Mishnah stated a case of where there's enough land and we divide up the chaser even if the parties don't ask for it, havamina, I would have thought, I would have thought that in a case of a field that is too small, right, doesn't have enough to be divided, I would have thought that maybe even if the parties want it, we don't divide it in that case. Kamash Malan, not the case. Kamash Malan, not so. Kamash Malan, therefore, our Mishnah comes along to say that even in a case where the field is so small that it's not really halachically divisible, if the parties agree on a division, then Allah, so we divide and put up a wall. Umi matzes amritzachi. But can you possibly say this? That in the case of a small field, if the parties wanted, we wouldn't divide it. Vaha katani seifa. But yeah, look at the end. Look at the seifa case. Emasai. When is this so? Bizman shein shneim rotzim. Or as well say, when is what so? When is it so that we do not divide up a field that is less than 8 amas by 4 amas? That's when ultimately, again, the parties don't want it. Aval bizman shein rotzim. But Allah said at a time when the parties want the division, yachloku, we divide it up. So when you say we divide it up, my lava kosel is not talking about putting up a wall. Lo, I'm a sifim ba'alma. No, maybe he's just talking about property markers. The Gemara says, if that's the case, Listening havlo, listening ha. So then just state this case and dispense with the second case, to which the Gemara says, Seifa tzrichale, we need the Seifa, ubekisvei kodesh, afa pisha shneim rotzim lo yachloku. So we'll say, no, we need the Seifa. Why do we need the Seifa? Because remember, again, from the Reishi, you would have just thought that any time partners agree to a division, we just divide it up, no matter what the item is. Kamashlan, that there are certain things that we do not divide up. Okay, so we'll say, let's go back there. So let's go back. So how are you setting up the Mishnah now? You're setting up the Mishnah as b'she'in ba din chaluka. So we'll say now, so just to frame where we're holding right in this moment, right? So right in this moment, we'll say, how are we defining the word mechitza? How are we defining the word mechitza? As a division. As a division, right? So now the way, and we're also defining that the chatzar in the Mishnah is less than 8 by 4 amas. So therefore, the case in the Mishnah is, Reuven and Shimon both want the chaluka. They decide they both want to divide up the chatzar. So now once they both agree, even though, again, normally this is not a divisible field, because they both agree we'll do it. And when partners agree on a division, when they say a division, then ultimately what? It's got to be a wall. Now, you could carry that over, right? So in other words, obviously if it's in this case, then in a case where ultimately, again, there is 8 by 4, or more, enough for a division. When one or both of the parties want a division, we force the division and you put up a wall. So mechitza means wall, right? Property is divisible. If it's less than 8 by 4, you need the consent of both parties. More than 8 by 4, maybe even just one party. That's to be determined. And when you divide a chatzar, what do you divide a chatzar with? What do you divide it with? A wall. Why? Hezek Re'iyah Shmei Hezek. Right? Visual damage is damage. So that's where the Gemara is holding right in this moment. So we'll see what the conclusion is, but here we go. So once again, how have you set up the Mishnah? So we'll see, you've set up the Mishnah as a very small field that's less than 8 by 4 amas, which neither party could order a division on their own. So we'll say, I don't understand. So let's analyze this, right? So Reuven and Shimon are neighbors. They are living in a chatzar that is less than 8 by 4 amas. So now what happens? The Mishnah says they agreed they want to divide it up. So the Gemara says, who cares if they agreed? Right? Because there's no din chaluka, either party could renege on that agreement at any moment. Right? So in other words, so it's fine. Right? They're making l'chaim together, and they say, you know what? It's good. Right now we're good friends. This is a great time to divide our property because let's do it while we're still friends, right? Before anything happens. So great. Now the next day, Reuven wakes up. He's like, well, 1 second. That means an expense for me. I don't want that. So why can't he just renege? To which the Gemara says, they did a kinyan. They did a kinyan, right? So for example, a kinyan chalipin, right? They did a kinyan sudar, right? We've seen this before. A kinyan sudar, right? For example, so one party gives the other party an object of value, lifts it up, and by doing so acquires a right. So they did a kinyan chalipin. So Gemara says, "V'chi kanam yadan my havi kinyan dvar ba'amuhu." We'll say kinyan chalipin only works when you're acquiring something. In other words, the way kinyan chalipin or kinyan sudar works is you're lifting up A, and you're acquiring B, right? Or some variation of that. So Lemaisa, I don't understand. So what are you acquiring in this case of kinyan chalipin? To which the Gemara says, no, b'shikano miyadan beruchos. So I'll say ultimately, what's the case? The case is where they are defining the areas of their respective chatzeros. So in other words, Reuven is saying, I'm acquiring the northern end, and Shimon is saying, okay, I'm acquiring the southern end. So they are each acquiring something with this kinyan chalipin. Because it's being acquired with a kinyan, therefore what? Therefore, halacha l'maisa, it is an irreversible transaction. Ravashi says, Kigon, we'll say first wide line, Kigon shahalach seh b'soch shalo, v'hichsik ba, v'hichsik, v'zeh b'soch shalo, v'hichsik. We'll say first of the widest lines. Or the other possibilities, no. They each literally went into their respective portions and did a chazaka. So the point over here is that even though this is halachically an indivisible parcel of land, because they're both agreeing to divide it, therefore it is divisible, but in order for it to be binding, there has to be some form of kinyan. So again, either a kinyan chalipin and they're each acquiring a specific direction, or they each acquire their respective portions through chazaka. Incredible. Makom shenago livnos. So we'll say, here we go. So we'll say, so now we'll say, so by the way, so this brings to a conclusion this first sugis. Like I said before, it sounds like the way that the Gemara is ending off is that the lashon of mechitza. So therefore, the way to read the Mishnah is like this: Hashutvin sheratzu lasos mechitza. If partners want to divide their field. Now we're going to see about say later on that when you have a chatzar that is more than 8 by 4, either party could trigger a division because each party ends off with a meaningful parcel of land. So why does the Mishnah make it sound like over here that both parties have to agree to the division? Because now we understand. How is this being set up? How is this being set up? This is being set up as a case of a parcel, a chatzar that is less than 8x4. If it's less than 8x4, then if you want to divide it, what do you need? What do you need? Consent of both parties. So therefore, both parties are agreeing to a division. Once both parties agree to a division, what does that require? Bonin es hakosel. How do you go ahead and divide up a field? With a wall. Not with boundary markers, but with a wall. Why with a wall? Why with a wall? Hezek, Re'iyah, Shmei Hezek. Visual damage, ultimately, again, is considered to be a form of damage. So we'll say, that we're not finished with Hezek Re'iyah right now, but just for the purposes of framing the sugya, the Rambam writes in Hilchos Shchenim, Parak Beis Halacha Yudalid, so he also gets into the types of, he says, Chatzar Shotvan Sheish Badin Chaluka, if you have a chatzar that's 8x4, where either party could order a division, or it's smaller than that, but both of them agree to go ahead and split the field. He says, listen to this, Yesh l'chol echad mehem lakof es chavero livnos hakosel be'emsa, kedei shelo yir'eu chavero b'shashim b'shtam shechelko. So we'll say, once there's going to be a division, either party could force the other to build a wall. Obviously, if they're both in agreement, they just want to build a little boundary marker, that's fine. But one party could force the other to build a wall. Why? Shehezek Re'iyah hezeku ve'in lo chazaka b'chatzar. So we'll say, so just to understand, we paskin Hezek Re'iyah is hezek. Hezek Re'iyah is hezek. So very visual damage. We'll say, it's very profound. The truth is, we know that Hezek Re'iyah is already hezek. How do we know this? Even on a hashkafic level. What do we say every single day in Kriyas Shema? V'lo sasuru. Right? Acharei avavchem v'acharei einechem. Right? Do not go ahead and follow after your eyes, after your heart, and after your eyes. So we'll say, so we already see Hezek Re'iyah. So a lot of times, the way we justify looking at things that we should not be looking at is how? I'm only looking, right? I'm not doing, I'm not acting, I'm not performing any aveira. It's just ocular ingestion, right? There's nothing happening over here. So what does the Gemara say? Hezek Re'iyah Shmei Hezek. That ultimately, again, what you look at has a profound ability to damage others, and also has a profound ability to damage me as well. Incredible Gemara, both B'halacha and B'hashkafa. We're not finished with Hezek Re'iyah yet. There is still more Hezek Re'iyah, but at least for now, we're going to close out this sugya. Let's go weiter. Says the Gemara. We'll say, so let's, we are up to, good, second wide line. So the Gemara says, Makom Shnagu Lidno. So now we're transitioning to a different topic, and now this is the topic I will say of what are you building the wall out of? So we'll say, so remember again, essentially what the Mishnah said is, what do you build the wall out of? What do you build it out of? Whatever the minhag hamakom is, right? Whatever people in that locale build their walls out of, that's what you're going to build out of. So says the Gemara, here we go, Gavriel. So now remember again, the Mishnah listed a whole bunch of different types of building materials. So Gavriel, Avnei Lo Meshafia. So what's Gavriel? Gavriel is unhewn stones. So Gazis, Avnei De Meshafia. Gazis is hewn stone. Dichsev, Kol Eila Avanim Yikaros Kemilos Gazis. So it's actually quite beautiful. The Gemara quotes the pasuk over here by the Beis Hamikdash. What did they build the Beis Hamikdash? Out of gazis, hewn stone. Incredible. Kfisin are archi. Kfisin are half bricks. Levanin are livni. Levanin are whole bricks. Amar Rava Berei Derav Ravashi. Mimai digvil amnei lo meshafyaninu. How do you know that Gavriel ultimately again is unhewn stone? V'hai tefach yisera lemarsha dekarnasa. And I will say, so remember again, by the way, why is unhewn stone thicker than hewn chiseled stone? So the Gemara attributes this to the unshaved corners. That in other words, apparently the corners by unhewn stone stick out more. They're more pronounced than the corners of hewn stone. Okay, that's why I say this. Gemara says, how do you know that's what it means? Dilma palga de gazisu. Maybe ultimately again refers to half of a hewn brick. And ultimately again, this additional tefach is for the mortar on the inside. So the Gemara says, kfisi archi. Because what it says, people say ultimately kfisin refer to half bricks. Okay, so levinin, livni. So bricks are whole bricks. So the Gemara says, v'hai tefach yisera lebeni arvi. And I will say ultimately again, the additional tefach is for any mortar put inside. Amrli v'letamich kfisin arche minol. And how do you know that kfisin, right? How do you know that half bricks or kfisin really means half bricks? So the Gemara says, Ela Gemara Gemirila. Rather, we have a tradition. So therefore, again, Gavriel Nami Avnei Delo Meshafia Gemara Gemirila. So Sotah will say again, a lot of these things, the way we know what the names mean is because we have a Gemara, we have a tradition that this is what it means. Now, I will say, normally Gemara means like a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Here, it doesn't necessarily have to mean that. Here, it could just mean is we know that this is what people mean when they refer to these items. That Gavriel always means unhewn stone, and Kfisin always refers to half bricks. Ikidar, so alternate version of this. Amr li Rav Adabre, Amr li Rav Acha Bered Rav Avya, Rav Ashi, Mimai Dai Kfisin Archenin, who had the Kfisin are half bricks. The high tefach Yisroel Bene Arve, and the extra half a tefach is because of the mortar in between the half bricks. Dilma Mike Kfisin, what are Kfisin? Avnei de lo Meshafyon. Maybe Kfisin really means unhewn stones. The high tefach Yisroel, the Moshe der Karnasa. And that additional tefach, that's because of the unhewn edges. Kedekaminon Gavriel Avni de lo Meshafyon. So we'll say because as we said, no, because Gavriel is unhewn stones. Gozis Avni de Meshafyon. Gozis, on the other hand, that's hewn stone. V'hai tefach Yisera leMorsha de Karnasa. And that additional tefach, that's for the protruding corners. Amar leila tamech. Gavriel Avni de lo Meshafyon minalon. How do you know that Gavriel means unhewn stones? So the Gemara says, Ella Gemara, V'hai tefach Yisera, leMorsha de Karnasa. Did I just skip? How do you know that Gavriel means unhewn stones? Unless we have a tradition, the Gemara says, Hachanami, so too by Kfisin, Gemara Gemiri. I have a tradition that Kfisin means half bricks. Okay, so essentially now, just going through all of our definitions. So again, just so we understand our definitions, Gavriel, ultimately it means unhewn stone, Gazis means hewn stone, Kfisin is half bricks, Levanin are whole bricks. Good, that's the totality. Amar Abaye. So Abaye says like this, we'll say 5 lines up from the bottom. Amar Abaye, Shmamina, what do you see from here? Kol Bene Orve Tefach. So we'll say, so first of all, what you see from here is something very interesting. So I will say that apparently the area so whenever you have items that have to be kind of cemented together, like half bricks, the area in between would be a tefach. You would put a tefach of mortar, essentially there in the middle. So the Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says, Hani mili, betina. That's only if you're using mud. Now, if I say mud, or a mud-like mortar, which was thick and adhesive. So but if you're using some type of mortar, Rashi says that was made out of like pebbles and dirt, which apparently wasn't as strong, wasn't as adhesive, you'd have to leave even more space because you would need more mortar. Others say, when do you need a tefach? That's ultimately, again, when you're using this more inferior type of mortar. But if you're using the mud mortar, which is a thicker, better quality mortar, then you could even use less than a tefach as the adhesive to bring everything together. Lememra. So we'll say, so now, okay, so fine, now we've gotten our definitions. We'll say, now we come to an incredible Gemara. Lememra. Debegazis techol dalet ames gova. Ihava fusya chamisha kai. Lo. So we'll say, lo kai. So we'll say, so let's take a step back for just a second. There's a piece of information that the Gemara kind of alluded to in yesterday's daf, and we're going to spend a little bit of time. The minimum dimension of a wall, when you're talking about a building a wall in a chaser, right? We'll call a hezek re'iyah wall, a division wall. The minimum height of that wall is 4 amas. 4 amas. We saw that even in yesterday's daf also, where you have, right, remember again, Reuven and Shimon had a wall fell down, you have to rebuild it. We only make them build up to the height of Dalet amas, even if it was taller beforehand. So now we see something very interesting, which is that halacha l'maisa, if you have a wall height of Dalet amas, which is the minimum height, essentially what you need over here, you could have in the case of gazis, hewn stone. Ultimately, again, you need a wall of 5 tefachim thickness in order to maintain 4 amas of height, right? Because the Mishnah said over here that halacha l'maisa, if you're building the wall out of hewn stone, right, each one gives 2.5 tefachim. So therefore, again, you have a wall thickness of 5 tefachim to support a wall height of 4 amas. So, right, we weren't thinking about it necessarily. When the Mishnah talks about the width of the wall only works if the width supports the height. So we're presupposing that the height of the wall is dalet tefachim, and therefore a width of dalet amas, which is approximately 6 feet, right? So a wall of 6 feet can be supported by 5 tefachim of width. Okay, so now watch this. This is really fascinating. So the Gemara says, The Memra, let's read it inside the Memra. The Begazis, when it comes to hewn stone, the Chol Dalar Amas Kova, every 4 amas of height, so the Gemara says, if it has a width of 5 tfachim, koi, it'll stand. Ilo lo koi. But if you have less than a width of 5 tfachim, then the wall will not stand. So I'll say, now watch this. Vaha amatraxin. What about the amatraxin? Now we'll say, what is the amatraxin? This is incredible. Look at Rashi. Amatraxin, Rashi says, Amatraxin, the binyan shlomo. I will say the Amatraxin we're going to see now was the 1 amma thick. What was the wall essentially in between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim, right? When you entered into the what we call the Kodesh or the Heichal, right? You entered into the first part of the Beis Hamikdash. So first you entered into like an ulam, an antechamber. Then you walked into the Heichal. Inside of the Heichal, what would you see? You would see the menorah. You would see the shulchan. You would see the Mizbeach HaKetoras, the incense offering. And then in front of you, in the first Beis HaMikdash, there would be a wall. There'd be a wall. Behind that wall was the Kodesh HaKadoshim, was the Holy of Holies. In the second Beis HaMikdash, as we're going to see, they didn't have a wall. They had a curtain instead, which we'll discuss in just a moment. So we'll say, so now watch this. Now look at Rashi. V'amatraxin, the binyan shlomo the gazisar. And remember again, I will say the Beis HaMikdash was built out of hewn stone. Dichsiv avnei gazis, v'havi shloshim ama komasa, ve'ein ovyav ela ama lahavdil ben heichal l'kodesh HaKadoshim. So we'll say, now watch this. The wall, the thickness of the wall, ultimately again was an amma. Right? In the Beis HaMikdash. Okay? The height of the wall was 30 amos. So we'll say, based on our calculations, the wall should not work. Why? Because based on our Mishnah, Rabbi will say, for every 4 amos of height, what do you need? 5 tfachim of width. 5 tfachim of width. So therefore I will say, for a 30 amma high wall, you need much more than an amma of width. So what's going on? The Gemara is just asking a construction question on the Beis HaMikdash based on our Mishnah. To which the Gemara says, "V'hayam atraxin dahavi gova tlasin amsa v'lahavi fusi al shis poshche." And yet again, the amatraxin. Tosfos by the way points out over here. Tosfos points out that ultimately, why is it called traxin? It's still, in other words, what does the word traxin mean? So just quickly, Tosfos says the etymology of this Umra Benotam the Tarak Havi Kamo Turkey Gali, right? The Sin Have Sinai. So he says it's a contraction of 2 words. He says Turuke means to close something. Sin means Sinai. So essentially, Amatraxin means it is the barrier, that which closes between Klal Yisrael and that which was given at Har Sinai. Because remember again, the Aron, bless you, the Aron was kept in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies, and inside of the Aron were both the smashed luchos and the whole luchos. So Amatraxin means the wall that was an Amma thick, Traxin, Tarak, Sinai, that closed off in front of that which was given in front of Har Sinai. Quite beautiful. So the Gemara says, here's the problem. The wall was 30 amas high, but yet only 1 amma, or 6 tfachim, thick. So the Gemara says, no. Kevan di ika tefach yisera kai. Ultimately, I will say, since that extra tefach, so in other words, apparently, so we're operating with the idea that since it wasn't 5 tfachim, in other words, what does the Mishnah say? The Mishnah says that a wall of 5 tfachim goes out and supports, a wall that is 5, again, a wall made of hewn stone that is 5 tfachim wide supports daled amas of height. So the Gemara is highlighting is maybe it's not incremental. In other words, the Beis HaMikdash, you have 6 tfachim of width. That extra tefach makes all the difference. Right? So that extra tefach allows you to go from what? From daled amas to 30 amas. To which the Gemara says, okay, or mikdash sheni my time of it amatraxin. So I will say, so I don't understand. So if that's the case, so, okay, which is interesting, that one additional amma of width would make such a big difference in terms of height. So the Gemara says, by the way, in the second Beis HaMikdash, why did they not have the amatraxin? Why was that not built? They had a curtain, as we said before. The Gemara says, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you, ki kai bitlasin kai tfei lo kai. Because also we're going to see, by the way, the second Beis HaMikdash was much taller. The ceiling height was much greater than the first Beis HaMikdash, and as such, up to 30 amas could work. Higher than 30 amas would not work, even with the extra tefach of width. So the Gemara says, Ki kai bitlasin kai tfei lo kai uminala and davi gavot tfei. How do you know that the second Beis HaMikdash was taller? than the first, because the pasuk says, Gadol yiyeh kvod habayis hazeh ha'acharon min harishon. Because the pasuk says, ultimately, again, the kavod of the second Beis Hamikdash will be even greater than the first. Now, I will say there is a machlokes, how much taller the second Beis Hamikdash was than the first. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, Bebinyan shahaya gofu meya ama. So we'll say this is incredible. So Rashi says over here that the second Beis Hamikdash was 100 amos tall. So we'll say, so just understand, like if you understand, like an amma is about 1.5 feet. Right, that is incredible. So I just want to point out that would also mean that the second Beis Hamikdash was essentially 3 times the height of the first Beis Hamikdash, which sounds like a very strange disparity. If you take a look, I will say, I don't know if in your Gemaras, if you have that little Zayin in your Gemara, the little Zayin. I'm sorry, no, actually not the Zayin, the little Chaf, like with the half bracket that takes you to Agos V'Tziyunim. If you look, he writes over here, Ayin Tosas Yantiv, Reish Parakei Diyuma, Divrei Maschal Lebeshe, the Garas Mem Amos. So Tosas Yantiv says, no, it's a mistake. It's a mistake in Rashi. So say Rashi, it shouldn't say Meya, shouldn't say 100. Rather, what should it say? Mem, 40. Oh, okay. So now, that's a little bit more reconcilable. So what that means is, the first Beis Hamikdash was 30 amos tall. The second Beis Hamikdash was 40 amos tall. There was a 10 amma increase as opposed to a 70 amma increase. Okay, which one was it? We'll Meretz Hashem, we'll see when Mashiach comes. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Rabbi Shmuel Silber, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lazar, Chadam Rabbi Binyan, V'Chadam Rabbi Shanim. So we'll say, so some say the second Beis Hamikdash was different than the first in terms of its construction, and others say it was different in terms of its duration. So we'll say Amud Beis. Now remember, B'Shanim means, Rashi points out over here, Gimel Amud Beis, 3b, Rashi says, Bayis Rishon Amad Dalad Meos Ve'eser Shana, Ba'al Sheni, Dalad Meos Shana. We'll say the first Beis Hamikdash stood for 410 years, and the second Beis Hamikdash stood for 420 years. So the second Beis Hamikdash differed from the first in 2 major ways. Number one, the first Beis Hamikdash was only 30 amos high. Second Beis Hamikdash was either 40 or 100, depending on the girsa. First Beis Hamikdash stood for 410 years. Second Beis Hamikdash stood for 420 years. So Gemara says, "V'isa laha, v'isa laha." By the way, they're both right. In other words, the second Beis Hamikdash was different in terms of height and duration. So the Gemara says, okay, so we'll say back to Beis Hamikdash. So now remember, it sounds like what the Gemara is saying is like this. The reason they could not build the Am Shach, so that's why in the second Beis Hamikdash, there was not a wall that divided between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. What was there? There was a curtain. So the Gemara says, why wasn't there a wall? Because the height wouldn't have worked, right? The difference is, we'll say, see, you couldn't have made the wall, this is interesting, you could not make the wall wider. Why couldn't you make the wall wider? Because then you throw off the dimensions of the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So it's interesting. In the second Beis Hamikdash, it would appear that the floor plan remained basically the same. But you could change the height, because the height doesn't change the orientation of anything. The problem just is, with a wall that high, the width of 6 tefachim of 1 amma can't support it. So therefore, they had to do away with the wall and essentially put a curtain. I will say, by the way, we're going to see, we saw this, remember again in Yuma, that's why, I will say, by the way, remember again, what was the curtain in the second Beis Hamikdash? What was the curtain? It was a double curtain. Why? Because they needed the curtain to occupy the space of an amma. That's why the coin went in, right, he zigzagged, because that amma was dedicated space to a barrier wall, or to a division wall. If you just had one curtain, the shaila would be, does that extra space go to the Kodesh or the Kodesh HaKadoshim? That's why the curtain itself was the double curtain that spanned an amma. Incredible, everything comes together. I b'nei avru, tzlasan amma b'binyan, v'idach navad parochas. So I don't understand. So in the second way, why don't you do like this? Make 30 ammas of wall, make a 30 amma high wall, and make the rest of the height of the wall, between the top of the wall and the ceiling, make that curtain. So still make the wall, because we know that 6 tefachim of width, 1 amma of width, could support 30 ammas of height. So just go up 30 ammas, and the last, let's go with 40 ammas. Let's go with the last 10 ammas as curtain between the ceiling and the wall. To which the Gemara says, no. Ki kai plus an amasa, gnami agav tikra umaziva havikai, but lo tikra umaziva lo havikai. So it's very simple. Why can a 30 amma wall be maintained at 6 tefachim of 1 amma of width? Because remember, I will say, you have another opposing force. What's the opposing force? The ceiling. Right? In other words, what keeps that wall in place is not only the thickness, but also the fact that it's a load-bearing wall as well. So it's the weight of the ceiling. I don't know if it's actually load-bearing. I'll take that back. But it's the weight of the ceiling that actually weighs down on the wall itself. So the problem is, You can't have a 30 amma wall that doesn't hit the ceiling because it's not anchored then. So that wall will topple. So therefore, again, building up 30 ammas and leaving it at a width of 1 tefach and putting a curtain on top, that is not going to work. So it's incredible. It's incredible. So fine, why don't you just do this? Build the wall as high as you can, right? So the wall is going to be 1 amma of thickness. So that we know. Let's say, right, that's literally set in stone. That says so 1 amma of thickness. Build it as high as you can. Build it as high as you can, and just make the rest of the area curtain. To which the Gemara says is incredible. Amar Abai says, Gemiri, we have a tradition, ikulu b'binyan, ikulu b'parochas. So we'll say, no. The way this wall works is, it's either all wall, or it's all curtain. B'binyan mikdash, ikulu, so the Gemara says, b'binyan mikdash, ikulu b'binyan mikdash. Shabbos say, if it's going to be all wall, that's modeled after the first temple. And if it's going to be ikulu b'parochas, and if it's all curtain, mishkan, that's going to be modeled after the mishkan. Shabbos say, essentially, the Gemara is saying is, our tradition for building this amatraxin, this division wall, is either all wall, like the first base of English, that was the model, or it's all curtain, like the mishkan, but no combination of it. Shabbos say, there's a tremendous Musar Haskell on this also. They'll say, what is the power of the Beis HaMikdash? What is the power of the Mikdash? And what is it that we lack without a Beis HaMikdash? This is so important. Sometimes we don't really fully understand what it is that we lack without a Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash represented a place of clarity. The Beis HaMikdash represented the place where you went in order to get clarity in life. Shabbos say, so clarity means there's no taroves, there's no mixtures, there's no ambiguity. So it's almost as if in the Beis HaMikdash, those things which represent division. This is here, and division represents, again, division in so many things like division between right and wrong. We saw this last night in Chassidus as well. In the Beis HaMikdash, there's no a wall that's half this and half that. There's clarity. There's no ambiguity. There's everything is clearly defined because that's what you go to the Beis HaMikdash for. To get definition, clarity, and dispel the ambiguity in life. Therefore, the Mishnah says, you can make it all curtain, the Gemara says, you can make it all curtain, or you can make it all wall, but you cannot create a mixture of the two. Incredible. I will say, that's what we lack in the Beis HaMikdash. What do we lack? We lack ultimately in clarity. We live with so much ambiguity. We live with so much gray. We live with so many tekus and so many unanswered questions. That's what we lack by not having a Beis HaMikdash, a sense of clarity in this world, a sense of clarity in this life. Let's go back to Hein b'sidan or hein below sidan. So we'll say, here's the shaila, interesting shaila over here. When we speak about the thickness of the wall, does the thickness of the wall include the plaster or not? So we'll say, so right, for example, the Mishnah gave me the thickness of all of these walls. So for example, let's say hewn stone, right? Hewn stone is 5 tfachim thick, right? Each party contributes 2.5 tfachim of space. Does that include the plaster used or not? So the Gemara says, I say, yeah, it includes the plaster. Of course, the plaster, right, is included in that measurement, that width. Because if the plaster is not included, then go ahead and include the plaster. In other words, I will say the whole point of the Mishnah is telling me how much space each party has to allocate. So if Lamaisa, again, at the end of the day, the plaster is not included, then halacha lemaisa, tell me the plaster. The fact that it's just given the shear of 5 tefachim indicates the plaster included. Rather, what do you see from here? That the shear include both the stones and the plaster. Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't include the plaster. So Rabbi say, why would it omit the plaster? So maybe the svara is like this. Since Rabbi say the layer of plaster is less than a tefach, it's negligible, and therefore halacha l'maisa, it's not included. We don't include it in the Mishnah. To which the Gemara says, here's the problem. The Gemara says, "V'hakatani beleveinin zeno sein tefach umechza, v'zeno sein tefach umechza." The Rabbi said we learned by bricks, right? By bricks, it says each one gives a tefach and a half. So we'll say, what do you see from here? Even half tefachim are reckoned in the measurements over here. So again, just because something is less than a tefach doesn't mean that it's negligible. To which the Gemara says, Hasam chazi l'surufa. Here's the difference. The difference is a half a tefach from this side, a half a tefach from that side, combined to form a complete tefach. All right, so I'll say, no, we'll have to let's just finish up. Tashma, hakorish amru rachba k'dei l'kabel ariach v'ariach chatzi l'vana. So I'll say, this is by an eruv, right? By an eruv chatzeros. An eruv chatzeros, the korah, right? The beam has to be thick enough in order to be able to hold a half a brick. Va'ariach chatzis levein shel gimel tefachim, and ariach is a half a brick of gimel tefachim. So hasam berevavta. So also that's talking about a large brick. Tekenami diktani shel shosha tefachim mechladi kazutra shmamina. So we'll say therefore again it says of 3 tefachim, which indicates to us that there's even a smaller one. Therefore shmamina. So we'll say therefore what halach l'maisa. What do we come out with? We did the last piece quickly. What do you come out with? The measurements include the mortar in the width. So also when we speak about the measurements of the wall, that's the building material and any associated necessary mortar. Also, we'll stop over here for today. Shkoyach and mazel tov on begin Basra. Absolutely incredible. I will say tomorrow's daf, forget about it. Right? Mamish, it is absolutely incredible. Beis Hamikdash, Gemara, Herod, all kinds of incredible stuff happening tomorrow. We're going to give ourselves, I think, a little bit more time here, Hashem, in the afternoon. Shkoyach, everyone. A good night of Shabbos. Good Shabbos.